Morning everyone from Alicante, Phil here. Apologies, I'm very aware of just how tired I look. I feel every bit as tired as I look, but we go again. Time for the latest edition of On The Whistle. Thanks so much for sending all your questions in. Obviously we're just going to talk through Sunderland's 1-1 draw with Nottingham Forest last night and all your thoughts and feelings on it. Really good game, to be fair. I was actually really encouraged by what I saw from Sunderland. Ultimately, Forest shaded the game. They definitely had more of the ball. They had more of the sort of clear goal scoring chances, I would say. But you would expect that. Nottingham Forest are a Premier League team. They've got hundreds of millions of pounds of quality. They changed their entire team at half time. Sunderland didn't, which meant they had a little bit of an injection of fresh legs for sort of 20-25 minutes in that second half, which made a difference. But there were some good signs from Sunderland. They moved the ball pretty well, pretty quickly at times. Anthony Patterson wasn't really tested. There were a few good blocks from Trey Hume in particular to stop sort of clear chances turning into goals. But generally, I thought Sunderland did really well. I thought it was a few things that we noticed. Lebris is really embedding that 4-3-3 system, which is like a 4-4-2 out of possession. I was encouraged by the fact that he talks about wanting to implement that, and you can actually see it on the pitch straight away. I feel like the messages are pretty clear for the players. Some really good counter-attacking. I think there's a lot more pace and intensity to Sunderland's game again. Didn't see the high presses much last night because ultimately it was well over 30 degrees, and obviously Sunderland were playing as kind of a team who had more of the ball and more quality than they usually face, so I think it's natural they were going to be a bit more cautious. But yeah, lots of good stuff, and really interesting as well that Lebris picked what we would probably say is his inverted commas strongest team at this point. Obviously that's sort of dictated to slightly by the fact that there are some fitness issues. Alan Brown's still getting up to full match fitness. He's not available for selection yet, although we should see him on Sunday. But generally this was mostly the team that we pretty much thought Lebris is going to go with, depending on what happens in the transfer market on the opening day of the season. And so with that in mind, really interesting to see Chris Rigg in midfield and Eliezer Mendy up front. Felt like a bit of nod to what they're doing in pre-season, a real sort of show of faith from Lebris, and both of them absolutely justified it. Rigg was superb, gave the ball away once or twice, but it's going to happen in midfield against an opponent of this class. But he's at the heart of all of Sunderland's best stuff, full of intent, full of quality, and obviously won the penalty as well. And credit to Dan Neil, whose discipline really set the platform for Rigg to go and do his thing. But he was excellent. And Mendy, really encouraged. The kid is still quite raw. His first touch could be improved. There's loads of parts of his game that can be improved. But he ran the channels well. He actually held the ball up. And what was interesting for me was you could see that some players had no fear putting long balls into him. They backed him to compete with the Forest defenders and make the ball stick. So that's really interesting. It's not me saying, it's only pre-season. The kid's got a lot to prove. And we saw with Hamir last year that actually what you do in pre-season can sometimes be very different when the competitive fixtures come around. But for me, really good starting point from Mendy. And at this point, I certainly don't see the kid going out on loan. So I'm going to go into your questions now. I'm just going to have a sip of coffee, if that's all right. The first one, well, a few of you asked about it actually, but Warren specifically says, can you expand on your tweets about Alexander Mendy? Obviously, a bit of a strange one. Halfway through the first half last night, a report from France broke saying Alexander Mendy had chosen to join Sunderland, that he was looking forward to doing his medical, and all was left was for the two clubs to agree a fee. Really sort of strong report. And so obviously, as Warren sort of alluded to there, I asked about people who would know at the club while I was there. The response that came straight back was that they were really surprised by this. Mendy is clearly a player that they like, but the deal is not imminent as far as they're concerned, and they're still weighing up a lot of options. So what exactly do I mean by that, Warren? Well, ultimately, with the striker position, with every other position, with the head coach position that we saw in the summer, you're aware that there's a million different factors, and so you're always looking at a number of different options. You have a list of players, and you're having talks with all these players, their agents and the clubs simultaneously. Every player will have their strengths, their weaknesses, and they'll also have what you think is their value. So the fact of the matter is, at this point, Sunderland haven't definitely decided that Mendy is the striker deal they want to do. They're juggling, they're spinning all these plates, they're working out the value of each deal, what it will cost them, and trying to work out which one is the best one for them to do. Now obviously it's hugely significant if Mendy has decided that Sunderland's the club he wants to join, because Sunderland like him, his club in France want to sell him, and if he wants the move, then it means that all the other clubs who are interested, there's interest from Saudi Arabia, we know, then that suggests it doesn't really matter, because he's going to want to hold out for Sunderland. But the fee hasn't been agreed yet, and there's obviously a reason why Sunderland as of yet haven't decided they want to push the button on this. So Warren, the idea certainly wasn't to sort of rubbish the story, absolutely not. Certainly wasn't going to say that Mendy isn't signing. that could yet happen. And here, if he does, experienced player who top scorer in League Two with Cannes last season, pretty encouraging. But what I was just trying to get across with those tweets is the club is saying we haven't decided this is the best option for us. I don't know if that's to do with the fee, it's whether it's to do with the player itself. Maybe it's because there's another really attractive option out there that they haven't given up on yet, and someone who, when they sign, we all go, wow, what a deal that is. So it might well happen, but just trying to get across the point that, I think it was easy from the strength of the piece to think, oh, this is going to happen tomorrow. Sunderland haven't yet decided that it's the right deal for them. So hopefully something progresses, whether it's with Mendy or another striker. But I think it's one where, there's a good chance it happens now if Mendy wants to move. I think that much is obvious because, it could potentially work for everyone. But we just have to wait and see whether Sunderland decide that the price tag that's on him and whether that's right and whether that's fair and whether they're happy to do it, and for them to be sure that they don't feel like they can do a better deal elsewhere. So let's wait and see. Ethan, thanks for your question. Ethan always sends questions in, much appreciated. Hope you keep them well. Says, who impressed you the most and who concerned you the most? I've mentioned Rig and Mendy there, who are excellent. I'm going to chuck one other name in because I've spoken about those two quite a bit. It's only 20 minutes, so it's really important we don't get carried away and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sure you all know, listening, all the usual caveats with it being pre-season. Leo Yelda had a fantastic sort of 20-25 minutes off the bench. He said when he first arrived that he saw himself very much as a centre-half first and a left-back second, which maybe surprised us a little bit because at the time, the need in the team obviously was mostly a left-back. Inconsistent start, I think, to his Sunderland career, which maybe you would expect given the team was struggling. He was really good last night, looked really confident, strong, marshalling. He had a very young defence around him. Jewison Bennett was at left back, Joe Anderson was next to him, Timothy Pembele was at right back. He was talking, he was marshalling, he was ordering, he looked strong, competed well, and he strode out of defence 3-4 times, like really, really well and aggressively. That little header at the end where Sunderland nearly won the game, where Rusin just heads O'Sheesh's cross over the bar, would have been a great goal, by the way. That was all started from Yelda striding out from the back and breaking the press. So I'm just going to chuck it out there that was a really, albeit a very, very small scale, but that was a really encouraging introduction from him. And so I'm going to put his name in there. Dennis Erkin, really good at left back. What a difference it makes both attacking and defending. Just really adds to the balance of the side. Who concerned me? To be honest, I don't think there were any bad performances last night. I thought across the board it was pretty solid. The one thing I will say is Dan Ballard was a big miss. There's an established partnership there that's now being broken up. I didn't think Elise in 09 quite had the same understanding and the same sort of confidence, but I'm not worried at the same time, Ethan, because obviously I think Elise is a brilliant option. I think it's a good blend in the centre of defence. I just think it'll take them 2 or 3 games. So if it is those two for the start of the season, I've got absolutely no reservations. Tony Byrne, thanks Tony for your question. Do we still look a bit goal shy? Yeah, a little bit. Like for all the positives I said about Mendy, definitely hasn't sort of cracked it, and there were 3 or 4 chances where a decent cross actually flashed across the box and Sunderland just didn't have enough bodies in there, and that's definitely a theme from last season. Sirkin, who I just mentioned there, he got the byline, but a brilliant cross into the near post, and just nobody quite made that gamble. So yeah, I don't feel as if I've seen enough evidence that the goal scoring issues have been solved, if you like. Sunderland do still look a bit goal shy. A few caveats to that. One is the heat I mentioned. I don't think you're ever going to get the intensity of performance in those conditions that you will hopefully get in the season. The calibre of the opposition is obviously important. They're a really good side. You're not going to commit too many players forward because they can pick you off on the break when they've got Gibbs White, Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, all these players. So a little bit concerned, but not overly so, Tony. Wait and see. I think Sunday's going to be an interesting game because Sunderland should have more on the ball and a very different opponent. So definitely I still have my reservations. The fact that Sunderland is still trying to sign an experienced striker suggests they still feel they need that. So definitely want to watch Tony, but I'm not getting overly concerned. And one of the things that it was obvious from the game was Lebris was trying to get the team to play quicker all the time. Quick. He kept shouting from just in front of us in the dugouts. You can tell that the counter-attack, they're trying to be more purposeful. They're trying to take as few passes as possible. And so hopefully we'll kind of see that yield some results. So yeah, yes and no, I think is the answer to that, Tony. Patrick says, out of last season's signings, who will have the biggest second-year leap? I'm going to chuck Matthew Powell's question in this as well, because he says, can Mendy be more of a senior striker next season? I think, Patrick, from what the evidence so far, it very much looks like it's going to be Mendy. As I say, it's not, we saw that he had real flashes of talent last year. It was just a case of sort of roughening the edges out of those games. You forget how young he is. I mean, he is still a kid, he's not that much older than sort of Joe Bellingham and Chris Rigg, and it's important to keep that in perspective. But yeah, like I say, the fact that the The players were happy to trust him. They backed him to hold the ball up, and most of the time he did it. The penalty obviously came because he picked a really good moment to press and steal the ball. Seen some really good signs from him, so I think Patrick, I would put him in. Yelder, who I've just mentioned as well, I thought he sort of caught my eye. It's hard to see him starting the season given the other options, but there's Carabao Cup games and all those sorts of things, and I'm thinking if he's at that level, it's going to give the staff a decision to make, but we'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, so Patrick, I think either Mendy or maybe Rusyn, who I think looks sharp as well, and that was one of the big positives last night. Okay, they didn't get a goal, both of them held the ball up well, both of them got into some decent areas at times, and with another maybe hopefully experienced striker in the building, maybe that's starting to sort of solve that issue. But yeah, Matthew, from what I've seen so far, you mentioned there about Mendy going out on loan last season. I don't see that happening at the moment. I just don't. He looks to me like he could be a really useful option. Obviously, what's the caveat to that? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? If Sunderland go out and sign another 2 strikers, then you've already got Rusyn in the building. Mendy's game time is going to be really, really squeezed. So that would suggest to me that maybe you would loan him. But the positive from that scenario is I feel like because of the form he's in and because of the experience he's now getting, you can maybe get him a loan where you feel like he's going to play every week. But at the moment, that's not going to happen, is it? Because he's needed and he's doing well. Howie 2008 says, do you think it will be a good team to watch under Labrise? Yeah, good question. I think hopefully I've kind of explained why last night wasn't the most exciting performance I've ever seen, but there were reasons for that, the opposition, the heat, all these kind of things. I do think Sunderland will be a good team to watch this year. I genuinely do. I think that some of the little interplay was really, really nice. There was one gorgeous little move where Rig played a really risky back heel and got away with it. It was brilliant. Roberts then popped a first time pass off, and Sunderland got 30-40 yards up the pitch in no time at all. And some of the little moves, Dan Neil switching it out to Serkin, there was some really nice stuff played. And also, as I said, there was a clear goal to try and be really quick on the counter attack, be really direct, not as in long balls, just as in take as few passes as possible. And early days, really early days, and I suppose the question that we saw last season will be, how do they cope when they play against a low block in a team who are trying to slow the game down and make it really difficult? That's when it's kind of hard to play some really good football, so we'll wait and see. But I'm encouraged from what I've seen so far, albeit early days. Mike Smith, Mike, nice to hear from you. Hope you're all keeping well. He says, any crack from Labrise? We didn't speak to Labrise after the game. Nothing sinister to that at all. Basically, he didn't do any club press either. I'm really hopeful that we'll speak maybe with a little bit more depth to Labrise before the trip's out. So just keep an eye on my Twitter page. Anything that I get from him, I'll obviously put out. I certainly think we'll hear from him, at the end of tomorrow's game, if not before. So yeah, nothing sinister to that. He didn't do press, but he will be at some point. So just keep your eyes peeled. And the last question from Hannah is, how many players do you think Sunderland will realistically sign? I had to write these down because I haven't got my laptop, so we've gone old school. I hope you appreciate the effort I've gone to for all your questions. Thanks for sending them in. Loads of really good questions this week. I've really enjoyed chatting through them. Hannah, I think it's a really interesting question. A lot of it depends on outgoings. Sunderland's squad's pretty big actually this season. In the middle, 10 subs yesterday, and kind of all those players that they brought on, maybe with the exception of Tommy Watson, would be players that would expect to be in the first team this season, and even Watson would feel he's knocking on the door. When I spoke to Christian speaking earlier this summer, he said, listen, we're definitely trying to add quality, we're definitely trying to do numerous signings, but we feel we've got a much stronger and a much bigger base than last season. So I don't envisage loads and loads of signings. Now, obviously, with the squad now, it's obvious that some of the players are going to go out on loan. Joe Anderson, I think, is one who's pretty obvious. Jewison Bennett, I think, is another one. He obviously came on at left back last night because Romain Mundle came on the left wing. That would suggest he's not right at the top of the pecking order, so maybe a loan for him. Embleton and Matete, 2 possible loan options, although having said that, I thought Embleton looked really strong when he came on last night, so let's wait and see how that develops. So I don't think there's a need, Hannah, for 6 or 7 signings. I just don't. I think Sunderland will definitely look to bring in another striker. We know that they're looking at this Mendy deal. The reason they haven't done it yet is because there's other options on the table as well. So there's one for sure. Will they look to strengthen in defence now that Ballard's injured? Possible, but not guaranteed. Will they look to add a sort of another attacking midfielder / winger? I think probably. But I do have to say that I think a lot of it at the moment is dependent on outgoings. They will have to add another player if Jack Clark goes, that's obvious. They will have to add another player if Dan Neil goes, that's obvious, but I don't think that will happen, I'm just saying. So to be honest, Hannah, I genuinely think we could be looking at 2, 3, 4 if everybody stays who Sunderland want to stay. I think the core of the team is pretty much locked in for the start of next season. And the big thing that will change it, as I mentioned a few times there, is outgoings could completely change the picture very, very quickly. But I don't see a huge amount of business if everybody stays. I see an attempt to add 2 or 3 bits of real quality to the group rather than a major turnover. So there we go. That's all your questions. Thanks so much for sending them in. Like, it's always such a pleasure to get so many nice questions in. I'm so grateful to you all for engaging and watching the videos as well. It makes it like I really look forward to do them when I know that, you know, there's interest in them and people want to listen. It's really nice chatting with you all on Twitter as well. So thanks again so much. Loads of bits and bobs already on the website today. Some news stories, my sort of moments that you might have missed from the game, looking a little bit behind the curtain from the friendly. Best fan pictures and the best pictures in the new kit, that'll be going on the website fairly soon. And then we'll have loads more stuff later in the day, and I'll be back tomorrow morning with another video in which I'm going to preview the Eldense friendly and then all your standard coverage from that game tomorrow night. So hope you all have a fantastic Saturday. I hope it's warm at home. I hope it's sunny back in Wearside. Get out there and enjoy it, and we'll see you tomorrow for some more video content. Thanks for watching.